Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tenant Services Committee meeting of the Toronto Community Housing Corporation. My name is Linda Jackson, and I'm the chair of the Tenant Services Committee. And I want to welcome everyone to the public session. We look forward to hearing from a number of deputants today, doing our best with our technology. This has been an interesting time for all of us in adjusting to a new way of meeting. I think we're getting better at it, but I hope that you will be patient if we encounter any hiccups. We will do our best to make sure that people actually are engaged and that we get through the agenda in an effective way. We are doing this meeting through this platform because it still is not actually advised that people gather publicly, so we will revisit that as the weeks go on and we see how things are going and have some advice from the city. Before we actually start our actual agenda, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting. And some of you may be on other parts of the land. I appreciate that people actually, one of the things that's good about technology is it does actually allow people that might not be right in Toronto right now to also join us. So maybe you will take a moment to reflect on the land that you're on today. I'm sitting on the land that's the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Inuk people. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and we acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And I'm just going to ask people if you can mute your agendas. Just we're hearing some paper moving, and if people can actually in the virtual meeting have their camera on, the board members, it is easier to actually I know that people want to see us, but I know that some people can't do that because they're out of town, and I wanted to let people on the public know that all of our committee members are present today. So that's John Campbell, Amanda Coombs, our tenant rep, one of our tenant reps, Debbie Douglas, and Uba Farah, another tenant rep, and Councillor Paula Fletcher, and and welcome. And I believe that we have is Councillor Frances Nunziata joining us this morning? She may be. Are you here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, welcome. It's so nice to have you join us. And I think you're a visiting director. It sounds like a visiting scholar. Welcome. We're so glad that you've joined the board, and we're happy that you could join us this morning for the tenant services. And I would like to actually also thank all of the TCHC. It surely takes a village to actually keep things going and to pivot. And Dara, our counselor, is going to be our board council is going to be keeping me in check as we go through the agenda. And we would like to, I would also like to actually take this moment to thank the staff of TCHC and the tenants. It is extraordinary what we have been living through in the last few months, and what we continue to live through. All of us had to actually balance our own health, our family's health, and work. Kevin has been keeping the board very weekly apprised with weekly reports on the work of the team, and I just wanted to actually thank on behalf of the board the members of the staff who have kept the corporation going and our tenants as safe as possible. And I would also like to thank the tenants because you actually took responsibility for your own communities and one another, and that's equally important. We're doing our best to support the city's efforts to protect public health and to limit the spread of COVID. But I'd like to thank everybody for stepping up, and we will be paying close attention as we go into the fall and continue to actually be taking direction from health officials. I want to explain some of the special procedures that we propose to follow during today's meeting. In light of COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing need for social distancing, we are holding this meeting virtually, as I have mentioned. Today however, is the first meeting that we are having live streamed. Thank you again to the team who have made this possible. This will allow for some live deputations from members of the public. We also have given people the opportunity to submit written deputations, and we really appreciate that the people have gone to great lengths to provide this written information, and they can continue to provide that information to us. But we will have an opportunity to actually hear from people. We are going to adjust the agenda a little bit today to allow some of the deputants to actually provide their deputations for more than one item at a time, and we'll move some of the items up so that we actually maximize those deputations. And Dara's going to help me with that as we get further on into the agenda. For the staff, any committee members who wish to either question staff in relation to the matters on the agenda have the option to do this through a chat function that we'll be monitoring closely, or to signal please to the board secretary that you wish to do so. So if you'd like to comment in the chat, we'll try to pay attention to it. We will also I'll be doing making every effort to ensure that we get all of the votes captured, and we'll ask each of you to register your vote as we go through the agenda items. It's a lot of information, and hopefully this will be an effective meeting, and we'll all actually move forward with the agenda, which is rich. And so I'm going to move now that we move into the approval of the agenda and review of the agenda order. So I'd like to see if we have approval of the consent agenda items, which are the approval of the public meetings agenda. This agenda with some adjustments to the order that we will go through. The confirmation, the consent agenda items are the approval of the agenda, the confirmation of the public meeting minutes of February 3rd. Boy, that was a different time, wasn't it? The use of the space policies update and the tenants first update are all consent agenda items. However, I will ask if any board member would like any of those items held. Hearing none, I'm going to ask for an approval of the consent agenda items.
Linda, Debbie.
Yeah, Debbie, thank you. And a seconder?
Seconder, John.
Thanks, John. All in favor? And now I can see everybody, so that's terrific. Amanda, Councillor Fletcher, you're okay. Debbie, John, and the only person I can't see is Uba. Oh yeah, no, I can see you, Uba, thank you. I can see everybody, thank you. So all approved, thank you very much. So we'll move to the regular agenda items then. The next item on our regular agenda item is the business arising from the public meeting minutes and action item updates.
Excuse me, Linda.
Yes.
Just if you could poll the directors for conflict of interest of any items.
Sorry, I missed that actually. Thank you. Can I actually ask if anyone has a conflict of interest on any agenda item? Thank you. Hearing none, I will assume that no one has a conflict of interest. Thanks, Kevin, though, for keeping me on track. So we'll move to item 3, which is business arising from the public meeting and action items update.
So there are a number of items that are on the public action item or action items that are in progress. You'll have reports on a number of those matters as part of this agenda, including an update on actions with respect to Airbnb, referral agreement. We'll have a quarterly housing update that is part of this agenda as well. And for matters that are in progress, you'll also note that we have identified a number of target dates by which we will be reporting back to the committee on those outstanding matters. Tucked in behind the list of action items, there is a briefing note that addresses the TSC public action item number 12, which is housing applicants from the centralized waiting list.
Thank you. And that item is up. Derry, your sound is a little bit crackly, just to let you know. But any questions from the board members on this? Knowing that we will actually be going into a little bit more detail on some of the items. And I know if you're like me, you're juggling looking at the actual.
I'm juggling everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm almost, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'll give people time to actually just,
Well, I think if someone scrolls through what's on the screen right now, I have 3 devices on the go and I still let's just scroll down.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. That's great.
yeah, and you'll see that many of the items are in progress coming back in November. And any of the items that actually are for today, we actually have a larger item later on in the agenda, the Airbnb, the referral agreements.
Right. Let's keep going. I think I have one. We have tenants first on our agenda.
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, so I do have, and I don't know if it's appropriate at all to flag a couple of things for the work plan.
Certainly. Go ahead, Paula.
I just wanted to be clear on the Lawrence Heights Community Benefits Agreement that it, I think we should of that since it's what's included, because often the actual targets and the job targets aren't there, including the apprenticeships and job training in the way that they might be in other places. And so I've had somebody mention this agreement to me that it could be more fulsome, and all community benefits agreements are being looked at right now. So I think just looking at what the scope, rather than just bring it, I don't know if we've ever had the scope laid out for us clearly. Not, I meant clearly. Here are the 5 main things we're trying to do. So I'm just flagging that, Linda, and I wonder if we could get something between now and Q 2021.
That's great. That makes sense. Is that possible, Kevin and Sheila?
So it's Kevin. I just want to make sure I'm clear. It's key principles and objectives of what we are looking for, Councillor Fletcher. Is that what you would like to see in advance? I don't want just
objectives, because the objectives are very lofty. I want that there will be how many square feet are being built, how many apprentices will be hired, what the community benefits agreement will ensure, what the job training might be like. We know that the Regent Park community benefits agreements that were in place did not deliver what we were hoping for, because we weren't clear enough, hardcore enough, and crisp enough in what we're looking for. Outside of some, it's great to have it's fantastic that we have scholarships and those kinds of things being given out. That is one part, but an actual community benefits agreement also includes for the build, and then what our expectations are between the developer, probably the city, and anyone else going forward as far as hardcore employment. And it's a little different, I think, than I'm looking for something a little different than what we've had before.
Okay, I think I've got that, and so I will work with Vincent on that, and we will come back to this committee later this year.
That's great.
Thank you.
Let us know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No worries.
And then I had one other one. It's about the violence reduction program.
Before you move on to that, Linda, may I just to add to that, I don't recall if, as Paula outlined, the details that we would want to see in the report, whether we had decided how often Vincent or through Kevin will report out on how it is that we will track the community benefit particularly interested in the employment and training pieces. I
Yeah,
don't recall what
I-
timelines and
Yeah, I don't either. I recall this was actually the item that was of great interest to the committee. Do you think we would be able to get an update for the next TSC from Vincent, Kevin? Because I think that would be helpful in terms of us knowing how much progress has been made and whether we need to actually follow up further. Great catch, Debbie. Thanks.
Linda, that's
Yeah,
really what
I'm-
I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
I knew that's what you were saying too. Like, so oh, there's
Because
Vincent.
I want
Yeah.
to see what it is we're trying to achieve
Yeah.
from our side.
Yeah,
And
Vincent, is there anything you can tell us today?
I want to go into it
we can-
today.
Okay, you don't want to. Okay,
I
but just
want
in
to have
terms.
that scope
Yeah.
clear so we can
Okay.
discuss, is that the full scope that we should
Sure.
have for employment, for training, for education, out of a revitalization? That's right. That's what I'd like to do.
Great. Do you want to comment briefly, Vincent, in terms of just more the ask?
Sure. So in response to Debbie's request, we can come back to the next meeting and present kind of where we're tracking today. And then with respect to the Laurentide Community Benefits Agreement, right now the engagement team is organizing several tenant engagement initiatives to start setting out community priorities, and then that will inform the basis for the Community Benefits Agreement. And so we're happy to bring that back, some kind of draft framework by the end of this year.
Great, thank you. And I think
Sorry, I'm back here.
Okay.
So it's great to track. We're looking at really and truly a revitalization. We've got many opportunities with tenants, particularly with the local tenants. That's a community benefits agreement for the local tenants. But there's one that's a broader TCH portfolio, which has to do with jobs and training and employment. And it's not just letting the 400 tenants at Laurentide say, here's what we want in the community benefits agreement. It is what the TCHC corporate goals are in a community benefits agreement. We've never done that. And that's where I'm trying to push this. And I think, Debbie, you understand what I'm trying to say, don't you?
you're on mute still,
Sure.
Debbie.
yes, I do, Paula.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just in response to that, Councillor, maybe I can just give a quick update. So, we've been working with the entire development team, including the engagement team and the relocation team. We're at an interesting point in time right now, dealing with anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism. And kind of revitalization had always been utilizing or leveraging land value to kind of address capital repair backlog. But the team, we've been working on kind of what you're speaking about and overall, what are the overall objectives that the revitalization program is set to achieve. And so we are meeting as a group and doing kind of breakout sessions as a development team from now until November, kind of highlighting what those 5 to 10 key objectives are. And in that, we do speak about what are the overall objectives in terms of community benefits.
Well,
But just to
Thank
set
you.
expectations, we may not be able to provide that by the end of this year.
I want to hear that. That's great. And I want to have it clearly stated, here's our corporate goals in redevelopment. Very often it's the developer that chats with the tenants and then they come up with some scholarships and other things. And I know that well, but getting the hard long-term training there is not part, and that's not just for the development team. That's for you, Kevin. That's for you, Sheila. That's for our board. And that's what I think has been missing. So I don't want to leave this all on your shoulders, Vincent. I want to bring in a larger conversation as to what the goals are. And this is evolving. I mean, with all large infrastructure projects, and when we look at Regent Park or Lawrence Heights, it's 100 acres. Obviously, that's a place where there should be a community benefits agreement that isn't simply, that has a larger goal frame to it. And we're evolving there. I'm not saying someone hasn't done what they're supposed to do. I'm only saying we have to catch up, but it's not just the role of the development staff. These are goals for the corporation that we want to achieve outside of leveraging the land value and replacing something. Because anyway, that's my little soapbox.
Thanks, Paula. And I think that bigger goal is one that we should bring forward to the November meeting for our input as well. So thank you. I think you had another item. Can you scroll down? There's a further, I think on the the violence follow up.
Yeah, the violence reduction, where it's number 8, number 4, number something.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Right, yeah,
Thank you, Sheila.
Yeah, thanks for moving it up. There it is. Yeah.
The violence reduction program is has been, yeah, we're going to get that in November. I'm just wondering, and we haven't, just for straight out where there's a lot of violence in which communities, and which really has to do with gun violence and how well we're managing that and how much we're able to help communities and how on top of that we are from tenancy management. I don't think that's been part of that discussion yet. And I would like to flag, so you're not surprised, Sheila, that that's something that I'm going to be asking for, not just the top 10 sites, but if we don't get a handle and understand where our difficult communities are, particularly for youth and communities, and what's going on and how we're tackling that. We do have analysis, and it's not just CSU. There's many facets to that. Then I think we're going to be a narrow approach. So that is what I'm looking for here, and I don't think the board ever hears that. I don't think we're clear enough on where our hotspots are and what our plans are around the hotspot.
Yes, and I wanted to acknowledge a written deputation that was from one of our tenants that was actually reinforcing that as well. And also would ask around how we're doing with cameras in our spots and how they're helping or not helping. That was one of the questions that came from the deputy. So we will have I think we should leave a good chunk of time in our November meeting for this item. Anything else from thanks, Paula. I really appreciate your leadership on these items and pushing our board. Sheila, are you trying to say something or no? Your audio is off, right? Oh, we've lost you. Okay. Have we lost you?
I'm fine.
No, she was just asking me for something.
We don't
Okay.
want to lose Sheila.
Okay, no, that's good. I'm checking on my people. All right. So, anything else from this item, the business arising? All right. Should I get Dara? Should we get an approval for information for this section?
I think what we contemplate is a motion to receive the information in the action item update.
Okay, for just this one, right?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Paula.
Paula, and a seconder.
I'll second it, Linda. I just want it on record again that we're still waiting for the CSU reporting out hiring and the racial and gender category.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Debbie. All in favor?
That will be part of that then. Okay.
Hearing no, I'm assuming that everyone has approved. The next item is the tenant complaints process, item 4. Dara, is this where we're going to actually do the deputants or?
Yes, we have, I believe Ms. Birch should be available to make her deputation in relation to item number 4. I understand from a note that Kaylee has passed me that Ms. Birch's preference is to depute on this matter at this time and then rejoin the meeting for item 5.
Okay, sounds good, Kathy. So are you going to patch us into Kathy? I can't wait to see her.
So I think we're going to join Ms. Birch for the for audio, but I don't. Ms. Birch, are you on the line?
Can you hear me?
We can, Kathy. So nice to hear your voice.
Good morning. I hope everybody's staying safe. This morning, I want to draw your attention to the attachments to this item, attachments 1 and 2. Let me advise all of you that our path monitors all of the documentation for these meetings and for accessibility reasons. And we want to advise you that we were not given the chance to vet either of these items prior to the package being put together for this meeting. There are accessibility issues with the documents included in today's package. We recognize that this department has a new VP in Paula Knight, and so we immediately contacted her about these issues with these documents. And she was very receptive, and after further investigation, we learned that the materials were adapted for this package. They're not exactly as what was delivered to the buildings. We recommend going forward that true representation be delivered so accessibility requirements are seen in these materials, or it be identified as being modified for the packages for the committees, for board members. We think it's important for you, when you look at that actual document, it looks all kind of squished together, and which doesn't meet accessibility requirements. But we want you to know that it has been modified just so that you can see it within your packages. I think it's really important. Our path is the current tool available to advise the department about accessibility needs, and we're working with Paula to make sure that all the accessibility needs are consistently being met. We recognize that the urgency during COVID, because this particular item is a response to an ombudsman's request, so it went out very quickly, we're looking forward to working with Paula to move TCHC to a larger, more effective vision of communicating to tenants and making sure that all the accessibility pieces are in place.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you, Kathy and Paula. There's so much wisdom from our path and from Kathy, and I would recommend strongly that they be consulted fully. Are there any other deputations on this, Dare? I don't think so, right?
No, there aren't.
So I'm going to ask the Sheila and John, I believe, to present the report and answer questions if necessary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a slide presentation that I'd ask our governance team to pull up. Oh.
So Nick, can you pull that up?
And if we can't, I'll present the report. So just by way of a little bit of background, in June of this year, June 24th, the board received for the first time a presentation in public from the Ombudsman. A copy of what was presented back at board in June is included in the report package. The Ombudsman came forward, identified a number of complaints that her office has processed. We had a fulsome discussion around those complaints, and one of the commitments that we made coming out of that board meeting was to refresh and improve communications around tenant complaints. So what I am presenting to you today is a response to that request. We have updated the tenant complaints process. We have put we can go to the first slide. We have instituted a new team called Solutions They're a single stage escalation point of complaint for our tenants. We have integrated the solution team into our business operations unit and basically provided a vehicle for tenants online, but via email, via call, to raise complaints with the services that we provide. Next slide, please. And why are complaints important for our company? As a customer service organization, we learn from our complaints. So as complaints come in, we resolve individual issues, and equally importantly, we look at trends and where we can move to improve service. So a refresh on the complaints process. When a complaint comes in, we initiate a 3-step resolution process. So the complaint comes in, our solutions team will acknowledge and provide back to the tenant a tracking number within 1 business day. That solutions team then gathers all of the relevant information, documentation. They provide that in a concise package to our regional management team, seek to resolve the issue, and report back to the tenant in writing within 7 business days. So there are 2 possible resolutions. One that we're able to satisfy the request, and in some instances we are not able to resolve the complaint, but we outline in clear language why that's not possible. So it's a 3-step complaint resolution process. If I could have the next slide. We have also, as Ms. Birch indicated, increased tenant and staff communications. As Ms. Birch pointed out, the documents that are in your package, the attachments are a smaller size, so the font isn't 14 point. What went out to buildings, the building posters and the brochure were compliant with 14 point. The building poster is in our buildings in a locked cabinet so that it is there as a consistent point of reference for tenants in our buildings, informing them in their buildings how they can make complaints. So the building posters have gone out, they're up, the brochures are available in buildings, in the call center on request. We've done some information outreach through social media, website. We had a feature on how to make a complaint in our tenant loop process, and we have also distributed to staff, to frontline staff, some Q&As, provided more information through the solutions team to the call center. And as I said earlier, we will track and monitor our complaints on a consistent basis so that we can learn from them, meet individual issues, but also look for trends in complaints that are coming in and how we can revise and update what we do to improve service. So that's the presentation, and we will be reporting back to tenant services on the data that I've just spoken about, what complaints are coming in, complaints about what's the magnitude, what trends are we seeing, what actions are we taking to improve service.
Thanks, Sheila. And can you comment on how frequently we would be receiving those updates?
So we'll provide an update to you at every tenant services meeting.
With data that's hopefully showing the trends.
Right, and I do have a brief presentation. It's 4 slides looking back on some history over 2017 to 2019. that I could present today, but it's at the will of the committee.
Maybe I'm seeing some nods of maybe we just go ahead. I think we did see some of that, right? In the report, or is it new information, Sheila?
It's in the material.
It's new material.
That there wasn't.
Yeah. Sorry, it was in your package.
Yeah. Right.
But it is new material for the committee. I can present
okay,
it.
Gotcha. It's not different than what was circulated though. So maybe I'll open it up for questions. And we'll see if anybody wants to see the data. I took a close look at this. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one quick question. It's Uba.
Uba, and then I'll get to John. Yeah, Uba.
Thanks, Sheila, and I think this is a great way of doing business. I just have a quick question. This group, are they diverse in terms of language and also the communication, and do they provide different kind of language other than English?
Yes, we do. Both through the call center, we have access, we use the same process that the city does. We have access to a service. If someone comes online and they speak a different language, we pull in a interpreter into the call to provide support, and we have also translated the brochure into multiple languages, and we're distributing that out to buildings now.
It would be great to have a summary of that. I think, Sheila, and to see that we're meeting the needs. Do we have that? I think. Oh no, I think we did have that, didn't we? I think you did provide the languages.
Yeah, but we can include it in the next update on complaints if that's helpful.
That's great. Sorry, John. I think you were next in the queue.
Yeah, Sheila, I'm just wondering if you can provide, and if this goes to 2019, if you could just provide some observations about the tenant complaints trends in 2020. And, in particular, I'm sort of startled by the note that 7% of tenants submitted multiple complaints, which accounts for 86% of all complaints at TCHC.
That's correct.
Does that mean that 7% of our tenants would account for 86% of all complaints? Is that the way that reads?
That's correct. So we have, our tenant population is 106,500 tenants. 78,000 tenants have generated 39,000 complaints.
Wow.
And we have tenants who complain multiple times. So when I talked about learning, right, what we've also got, we've got breakdown by building, by tenant, complaint issues. So we need to look at what is the genesis of the complaints, why are the multiple complaints coming in, and be able to respond to that. And I'd also point out that 87% of our tenants today don't complain.
All right, well, that's a pretty good number.
That's a pretty good number, but there may also be underlying issues that we need to address that we're learning about as we do more work on anti-Black racism. There may be underlying issues as to why tenants don't complain. So that's something else that we need to pay attention to.
Have we ever undertaken a tenant satisfaction survey?
So we have had tenant satisfaction surveys. My experience with that particular survey was that it was very broad, very high level, hard for us to really get in underneath and understand what the issues were. So what we're implementing through the restructuring are service quality indicators. So tenant service hub by hub, we will be out having frontline staff assess the quality of the service that they're providing. When we get our tenant leadership established, having tenants respond hub by hub on the quality of service that they're providing. where there's a disconnect or where service is substandard, then management will be out in those buildings to rectify those issues. So we are looking forward to getting the hubs up, moving through COVID, being able to get our tenant leadership in place, and hub by hub, building by building, understand what the issues are and be able to.
Okay. So that's really good. Just quickly then, Sheila, if I were to look at, if you were to have a year, you know, another part of the bar graph that indicates 2020, have complaints continued to rise, or have they leveled off, or have they decreased?
So we've had more calls into the call center, primarily related to COVID.
Okay.
So COVID is an anomaly that we're working to try and extract the COVID issues from the complaints so we can do that analysis that you've asked for, but it is fairly complex.
So are people saying that they don't feel the public spaces have been made safe and clean enough?
No, it's not so much around that. It's more the issues that we get are how do I get a mask? How do I?
Well, that's not a complaint.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. They're getting more calls, but they tend to be focused on that.
Right. Okay.
But they might be coming in through that process, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
I wonder, not to put you on the spot, but Uba and Amanda, I wonder if you have any thoughts on this as tenants representatives around this new process. Have you had any feedback from anyone or any thoughts yourself?
I haven't heard much because of COVID and all that, but I think it's a great way of being close to the tenants and making sure that the outcome that we're looking for is what we're going to get in terms of supporting them, is in terms of having these different hubs where tenants don't have to wait days, and then, you know, they can see someone within the day and have an answer within a couple of days. So I think it's a great way of conducting business.
And Amanda?
Yeah, I also think that it's a great way of now conducting business with our tenants. One complaint that I have gotten recently is that I think was mentioned before, they don't feel that the space is being cleaned as much as it should be. And they also want to know, it's not really a complaint, how they can get like hand sanitizer into the recreational spaces, and if there's a process that will be started for them to get masks, and when they'll be able to access those spaces again. Yeah.
Those are really good questions around the COVID piece. Thanks, Amanda. Sheila, any comments with regards to that could be brought back?
So we do have an update on COVID coming up. I will say, though, that we have made masks available to tenants through their superintendents in buildings very recently. We have hand sanitizer now in all the buildings. We have not yet opened the community rooms other than as cooling centers, and we'll be monitoring what happens when everybody goes back to school very closely to see how and when we can open those spaces. It is a last big piece of work that we have to do.
Thank you for letting me go ahead, Amanda.
Does the space, because I know some buildings, they do have access to their gym space. So I had some tenants wondering when the gym would be open again in particular buildings that have recreational centers for fitness.
So we have put a pause on opening those spaces until mid-October. We want to see what the impact is of the schools reopening. Okay.
Thanks, Sheila. And Uba and Amanda, I think if you can keep an ear to the ground on this tenant complaint process and provide any feedback, you know, of note, it would be great if actually we were hearing from more people as well, and that they actually know about this process. So thank you. Are there any other comments before we adjourn this item?
Yeah, I do have one. Just
go ahead, Councillor Fletcher.
just for the brochure, which is going in the, was that reviewed by any of the tenants? I mean, it doesn't, I would have to say it doesn't look like it's new, but how did you review that? Anybody run that by any tenants, or was this just done as a corporate flyer?
So I am going to ask Paula Knight, our new VP of Communications and Strategic Planning, to answer that.
Good morning, everybody. This is Paula. I hope you can hear me. We did not actually take it through a tenant review. We used our standard protocols in terms of creating content just based on feedback we've had previously through our tenant groups. This was created sort of through a paced process just to be able to meet the timeline that we had to get this out. But we are using common best practices. The icons that you see, for example, are based on what the city uses. So we've really used the protocols that we've had in place previously in terms of creating tenant communications.
And just as a thank you for that, I just called 981-6000 just because it's the number on there. And I will just have to say that the answering machine, the person's talking so fast, they're talking just like this. So the points that I believe that Uva raised about language or second language speakers or non-English as a first language speakers, that might be very difficult to follow that. And just drawing that to your attention because I had a hard time.
Thank you.
Number one. So always, I think, particularly when we're going out into buildings and for tenants, we have to think like a tenant and think like all of our tenants, how to access. And when we say nobody's complaining, if we think like a tenant, I know I certainly get a lot of complaints that aren't when people have called in and maybe not gotten anywhere with the building superintendents, etc. But sometimes folks have just given up. So if we're launching a true new tenant complaint process, I think it is new, and unfortunately that we're not crowing about that here. And we have to give it time, and we have to give people hope that when they are calling, that they're going to get a response. And I'm very appreciative of what you said, Sheila, and using the information to go back and see from the hubs are what's going on the ground, because I think that there's not a clear understanding of what really goes on the ground and who's managing well on the ground and who needs help to manage better in different communities. So if that's part of this, bravo, that's going to be great.
Thank you, Councillor. And I will call that number too.
We all will.
I'm ashamed
we all will. Get ready.
Everybody's going to be calling.
Yeah, and I hope and everyone online, I hope are hearing that too. That we're interested in your feedback. So thank you. If there aren't any other questions, I'd like to actually ask for a motion to receive this item.
I'll move it.
John, and seconded. Amanda, thank you. All in favor? Hearing none opposed, I'll approve that. And I think we might have time, Derek, for the next item for the OACH report. What do you think before the city joins us?
We can try. I think it makes sense to proceed in that way. Ms. Birch is on the line and ready to depute in relation to that item as well.
Great, and just to let people know that we have the city joining us at 10 o'clock, and we might actually have this item in two parts, but we'll start with Kathy. Welcome back, Kathy.
Good morning again, and this is the last time you'll hear me today, I promise. In addition to the commissioner's report that you have before you, the RPATH committee feels you also need to be aware of an issue that's been on our radar for over a year. As a member of the original external advisory committee that created the Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity, it's important for that office to be physically accessible, not only for tenants to attend, but for employment purposes as well. The office was placed at 341 Bloor Street West so that it did not have the appearance of undue influence by TCHC management for the privacy of tenants' comfort level and because it was close to the subway. Since the opening of the office, staffing requirements have increased over the last few years. Originally, there were only 5 people in that office, and now there are 11. Since we, TCHC and RPATH, have developed accessibility build standards that include office spaces, it was necessary for us to do an assessment of that office. The Commissioner's office is not currently accessible for tenants or employment purposes due to space availability. I met with the Commissioner and her staff for their input as to what they felt their needs were. RPATH is working with design and engineering to not only meet the Commissioner office needs, but the needs of the reorg hub requirements, because they're both going to be in that building. Both needs are critical to the work that they need to do. TCHC is adhering to their own commitment of not losing active tenant spaces in developing the hubs. As a result of the very limited space at 341 Bloor Street, RPATH has sent a recommendation to Kevin and Sheila that the Commissioner's office be moved to a City of Toronto building such as 55 John Street. It's not recommended that it be placed at 423 Yonge, where the seniors housing unit is located, even though the Commissioner's mandate is for seniors, for the same reasons the original external advisory committee did not place it at 931 Yonge. RPATH recognizes that the hub requirements of the space at this location is the priority at this building. It is not optional for the reorg plan. They must have that hub at that building. It's possible to move the Commissioner's office out of the Bloor Street West location. We know that TCHC is pursuing answers to this challenge, and it is hard. It's a big challenge. It's all about timing the city space availability in the downtown core. And what we're asking is that updates on this accessibility issue for OACH be provided at either through the OACH reports or through the President's reports at the TCHC board meetings. We must make the Commissioner's office space fully accessible.
Thank you, Kathy. This is a little bit outside of the Commissioner's report, so I wonder, before we actually ask Cynthia to comment on her report, whether there's any follow-up, because I know this item has come up before. I too, Kathy, when I have visited the OACH office, have kind of marveled at how inaccessible it is. Any thoughts, Sheila or Kevin?
So we are, as Ms. Birch indicated, we are working closely with RPATH. They have provided a brief for us on what they feel the programmatic requirements are for accessibility. Design and engineering has that. We are looking for a location, working with city staff to see if it's possible to locate it in a city premises. So it is a project, it is work that is ongoing, and as Ms. Birch indicated, we will report back to the board on how we move through that project.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. And let's stay on top of this one, because I know that this has kind of surfaced a couple of times over the last couple of years, and maybe now's the time with all of the other changes that are happening. Darren, go ahead.
With the hub requirements,
yeah.
And the hub is not optional, but neither is the Commissioner's office.
Right.
But as far as location, the only one that has the option to move is the Commissioner's office. So as we work through this, and that I just think it's really important that it stay on the radar of everybody that this needs to happen, and it needs to happen soon.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. Dara, do you think we should start with the commissioner's report, or do you want us to go to the city?
Go to the city.
City's not on yet, is it? Dara?
Sorry, yes, I'm here. I had myself on mute. I don't know that we've got, at this stage, all the staff on the line for that matter, so I would suggest we still got a couple of minutes before we hit 10 o'clock. Cynthia, perhaps you can advise whether you think that's enough time for you to get through your report.
Hi, sorry, it's Melanie here. Cynthia, I'm representing her today at the meeting. She's not here today. So,
hi, Melanie.
hello, everyone.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. So I just had a few things to highlight on the report. It shouldn't take long. It's really, I can probably do it in 5 minutes if you want me to just go through quickly. I just had 3 things to highlight from the report.
Go for it. Thanks, Melanie.
All right, so the first is I just wanted to highlight the collaboration that TCHC and OCHA have been doing in Q2. So first, we've been doing a comprehensive review of the arrears collection process. So developing a new process that is more tenant focused, focuses on process and training of frontline staff. We've been working really closely with TCHC, and we're hoping this new arrears collection process will be implemented by the end of Q4 2020. We've also, in response to COVID-19, developed with TCHC a short-term referral process, whereas before TCHC needed to serve an N4 before they could refer a case to the OCH. Now we've made it so they can refer before the N4 is served, because we saw when COVID hit that we had a great reduction in number of referrals sent to our office. So through this new process, we've actually been referred 112 cases, and it's allowing OCH to get involved earlier and creating a more streamlined, easier process for frontline staff to get cases to us. And lastly, we've developed a new initiative for RGI tenants with arrears for more than 1 year. So TCHC has coined these as hardened arrears. So they've sent us over so far 145 cases. So these are all cases where the arrears are a year or older. So we're working with those tenants to try to resolve those arrears. And this will allow OCH to deal with the more difficult cases and TCHC to focus on the new arrears. So just wanted to highlight those 3 things for the Q3 report, and I did it in under a minute.
That was great, Melanie. Thank you. Comments, questions from board members?
Hi, it's Paula. I'm very happy for the new approach, where the really tough nuts to crack are going to OCH because that's the specialty, and I think it takes a lot of pressure off of regular staff to do a myriad of small problems, and then tackling these big ones are very time consuming and difficult. So hats off to everybody. And I think I see your hand in there, Sheila Penny. Thank you very much, because it's been difficult to get TCHC to agree to send these over early and get them off the desk of the regular intake. And I can understand how frustrating some of these cases would be. So the ever patient, long-suffering staff at OCH, that's really what you like to do, is take the hard cases. So brilliant, thank you. And I just want to congratulate everybody for this new move. Breaking that log jam was very big. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, to what do you attribute the sizable drop in referrals in the second quarter? Was that federal government supports for people, or what was happening there?
It was in response to, sorry, want me to go, Linda?
Go ahead, Melanie.
Yeah, it was a result of COVID, because TCHC could not issue the N4 to tenants, which was kind of the gate. It was what would trigger a referral to our office, the N4 had to be served. So that was why we had reduced referrals, because they weren't able to serve the N4, which is why we developed this new process where they didn't have to have the N4 served. They could just streamline the referrals to our office.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to thank OJ, because I think what happened, John, too, is that the team really saw an opportunity to actually work really hard on some process improvements during this time, and really jumped in as well and helping with the COVID response and working closely with Sheila. So I too wanted to thank Sheila and Cynthia and Melanie and the team for what I see as a greater integrated approach. So I'm just hoping that finally we will see, like, ongoing data that actually reveals that, that a difference. So we're with you though. So thank you, Melanie. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to ask for an approval of this report for information.
I'd like to move that.
Linda, it's Debbie.
Sorry, Debbie's not
Thank
yet.
you. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. Anyone else? All in favor? I see the eyes from everyone. That's great. Thank you. That's great. And please send our regards and thanks to Cynthia as well and the team, Melanie. Great work.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for good work.
And Linda, if I could just add, just before you move to the next item, that I am, the collaboration that I'm seeing between OACH and the operations team is top drawer right now, and it is the first time that I've seen that level of collaboration, and I think you're going to see great things come out of it.
Great. Be still, my heart. Let's make sure we minute.
But Linda, not too still, because then that just flatlines it, right?
Oh no, that's true. Actually, I must say, Mike's, it's okay. If we can make sure that we minute the board positive feedback, that would be terrific. Thank you, Juliana and team that have joined us. It's so nice to see you. We are going to move to item 7, right? The seniors report. Dara, that's the right one for this for our city group to jump in.
Yes, that's correct. And I think Grant is also on the line.
Hi, Grant. Nice to see you.
Hi. Good morning.
Dara. Sorry, Grant, just before you start, Dara, I know that the committee members have all read the report, so perhaps if we could actually stop the sharing of the document so that you can see all the speakers that are speaking. Otherwise, you've just got a ribbon on the top. That would be, I think, helpful for everybody. Thank you.
Or the side. For those of you who don't use this, you can actually put people on the side and you can see more people. It's actually a little trick that I've learned. Yeah, thank you. And do you want to start, Kevin, or who wants to start with this? Maybe a few remarks?
Well, no, Grant is and you can see Grant now on the screen. Grant's the general manager of the seniors portfolio. Grant came over earlier this year on a secondment from the city when Jill, who was previously on secondment from the city, had to take a different role at the city relative to the impacts of COVID. And Grant has been, just excellent at coming up to speed on this file and working not only in terms of day-to-day management of the seniors portfolio, but a lot of the work that is going on in the tenant's first piece of the seniors and the new seniors corporation the integrated service model. You'll see that Juliana is on the call as well. And Julie, I think you have a couple of members of your team as well on the call. I just don't see their faces in my particular screen, but I think they're here.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I have Andrea and Jen are joining me to help answer any questions in case there's more detailed answers than you would like to hear.
Okay, great. So I'm going to turn it over to Grant and let Grant take through the discussion, and certainly Juliana and her team and Grant are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Great.
Over to you,
Thanks.
Grant.
Welcome, Grant.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kevin and Linda. So this report in front of you today is to provide an update on where we are with regards to the implementation of the integrated service model associated with the seniors housing file. It provides a high-level view of some of the activities that we've been working on and over the last period of time since the last update in February, and as well upcoming activities. I'll just, as a quick background, this obviously relates back to the tenant's first work, And, you know, the outcomes associated with what we're trying to do in the integrated service model wrap around things like ensuring that buildings are clean and well maintained, that tenants feel safe, that there's an increased access to services and supports, and that we have more frequent and proactive communications. Those are backdrops to the work that we're doing, and they're highlighted in the report. In terms of the activities that have been underway over the last period of time, we've been working on the staffing plan associated with putting in place some of the new roles for the seniors housing unit and the rollout of the ISM in phase 1 in a region of our portfolio of buildings. We've been working with the Senior Services and Long-Term Care Group with Andrea and Paul and team with regards to an accountability framework that they are bringing forward that will guide measurement associated with the outcomes of this effort to implement the ISM. We've been working as well with the LIN and our partners with regards to how we're going to improve the model and the partnerships we have to support the tenants as we move forward. And that has included looking at our different partnership agreements and analyzing that. We've also been working together to support the Social Development Finance and Admin Group with Jen and the work they're doing on the due diligence associated with the Seniors Housing Corporation, which is something that they can speak to if there are specific questions. And all of this has demonstrated a strong collaborative approach between the different groups as we move forward. From an engagement perspective, earlier in the year, we did have a stakeholder engagement forum where we had 74 different participants from across a variety of different perspectives work together on some of the elements associated with moving forward with the ISM to provide input into the process. And then subsequent to that, we also are continuing to work on setting up the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee. This is something that was started in February with applications, but was paused with COVID-19. We subsequently restarted the application process, which is active right now and will be in place until October 2nd, looking to get additional applicants to come forward so that we can have a diverse and representative pool of applicants on this committee. And then quickly upcoming in the next quarter and for the final portion of this year, we are going to be moving forward on putting in place the roles, some of the new roles in the Southeast region of 18 buildings where we're going to roll out the ISM phase 1. That will include supporting and training for staff and these new roles, bringing them into place. We're continuing to develop our engagement plan and looking at opportunities to engage tenants further in light of some of the restrictions with COVID. We're going to continue to work with our partners on evolving the model because ultimately this integrated approach to looking at tenants' needs and the unique requirements for seniors is paramount in all of this. And then we're going to continue to support the work for the accountability framework and the due diligence associated with the corporation. All of this, you know, together will lead us towards a path to hopefully implement the first phase of the ISM this fall before the end of the year, and then subsequently the remainder of the ISM or the rest of the city would be implemented approximately a year later after we've had a chance to move forward through the first phase. And I'll stop there if there are any questions.
Thanks, Grant. This is transformational work, and I think many of you may have some questions or comments around this. It's great. I appreciated the report and the highlights that you just provided, Grant. Questions from board members? Councilor Fletcher. Yeah.
Just on getting, hi Grant, on getting, and hi Juliana and all the rest of the team. On getting applications, what's your outreach plan, particularly during COVID when even seniors now are not as active or leaving the buildings? Are you working through
Sure.
your building superintendents? Are you working through the Toronto Seniors Forum? Because there's a lot of TCHC tenants that are part of the forum. What's your plan for that? And is that enough time?
So,
do you really have enough time at the moment?
So, thank you for that question. So I'll highlight some of the activities in our engagement plan and certainly open to thoughts about how we can strengthen that if there are opportunities. So we've opened the application period to be 6 weeks this time. The first time the applications were put out, it was a 2 week. So it was a fairly short time period for people to be engaged and made aware of it. So we've tripled the length of opportunity to get the information out there and for people to be engaged. We have revamped and put up additional and new posters in the buildings. We've also been using online, so we've got content in up on the TCHC website and also using social media. We have recently distributed the distribution of the Senior Speaks newsletter that goes out to all 14,000 tenant households, and in there's information about the stack as well. Hoping people can get engagement through that. We're working with our engagement CSCs, who are closely linked to the work with the tenants to help them promote it as well. We're working with the city SSLTC group to have it on the city website. And then we're hoping to have an information session, a phone-in, conference call type information session midway through the process to help ensure if there are questions from tenants that might want to show interest in this, that they have an opportunity to have a forum to have those and then make a decision about whether they would apply or seek additional information. If there are additional avenues within which we can seek engagement, we are certainly open to that. Right now, just for context, we're aiming to have a minimum of 45 applications, which is what the public appointments group has suggested we would need to meet the sort of criteria to have a pool. We did have 29 applicants originally, and we are at 31 right now. So we certainly have a need for additional people to come forward, and we're very hopeful that we'll be successful in achieving that. We're going to monitor progress as we go along to try to pivot and change strategies if we need to.
Can I just ask Sheila, for the tenant engagement in the actual seniors buildings, what's the plan there for the tenant reps? Is it in or out of this process? Are we going to have those same elections for building representatives in the seniors?
Yeah, it's the same strategy that seniors buildings could elect one of the 4 options. They've elected their part of the process.
All right. So when we get to that section of the agenda, it'd be helpful if you could let us know of the first tranche of buildings, how many of those are the seniors buildings, or if we need to hive those off and have a special process, because there will be representatives from each of the building along with whoever makes it for that, selected by tenants, not selected any other way. Thank you. And for the governance issues, I'd just like to ask you, Juliana, where are we around the governance of the new seniors unit?
So good morning, everyone. In terms of the governance, we're just completing our due diligence review. So we're looking at, looking at it from a financial aspect, from a governance aspect, a labor relations aspect, and other legal things that we have to consider as we transition from a seniors unit to a corporation. So that report we're planning to bring forward to executive committee this fall. And we're also hoping at the same time to provide an update on the integrated service model, as well as the accountability framework that staff were asked to develop and that framework will just monitor and evaluate how we're doing on the integrated service model to make sure that we are actually making a positive difference in the lives of the seniors that we're supporting.
And can I just ask, because it's the first time we've had you and your great team here, that the OACH really does look at seniors issues. And when you go through all of her portfolio and see the things that she's dealt with, how has that been integrated into the thinking around the seniors model from your end?
So
since you have the lead on that.
Yes. So Jen we've been doing a lot of outreach with all of TCHC staff, and I also believe with the OACH, but I'm going to ask Jen and Andrea to pipe in and explain the connections they've made and the engagements they've done as we've moved forward on this.
Yeah, I am interested specifically in the OACH because her mandate is the seniors and difficult tenancies and problems they're having. So I'd like to know how well how you've taken those OACH learnings and baked them into the new seniors unit, and also what happens to the OACH, because there are some opportunities to cross over as well to the regular portfolio. So
So maybe,
That's what I
Jen,
meant.
Jen, are you
Yeah.
able to talk about the engagement with OACH? And I mean, the governance might be back to Juliana in terms of
Yeah.
where OACH sits, right? Jen, hi, Jen.
Hello, I can definitely speak to that. So we are reviewing the OACH and its various functions to determine how those functions would continue both at TCHC and the Seniors Corporation. So that will be an integral part of the report. We have engaged with the OACH deeply around the development of the integrated service model. And I think we took a lot of learnings from the OACH approach and the way that OACH runs their business. So it will be the full review of both, of all the services be included in the report.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jen.
That's great, Jen. And Juliana, I don't know about the governance, whether that's actually been addressed yet.
So on the governance for the corporation, the things that we're looking at, and we're working with legal very closely on this, is we're going to have to, we know that when we report out in October, it's to get the go-ahead on moving forward for 2021 on creating the corporation. And if council endorses that we continue down that path, we're going to be considering how we set up an interim board, because you're going to need an interim board before you transition to a full board. And the mandate, we're going to bring forward a mandate and a shareholder direction to guide that corporation. So all of that work is going to be in the next phase. What we're doing now is just assessing what we need to do, like what our October report will outline is the steps we need to take to finalize the governance, the process we're going to use to establish an interim board, et cetera. But I do have to go forward to council. They asked us to do the due diligence and report back before they make the final decision on moving forward. So they approved the Seniors Corporation in principle quite firmly, but they wanted us to undertake this due diligence review as the final step before we move forward. So there'll be more details in the report, but those are the sort of things that we're considering. We're also working with TCHC to understand, as we cannot develop a full service level agreement in terms of who does what and how TCHC might support the new seniors unit, so we don't have duplication of service. But there are key areas that we're looking at, so we don't end up having to create a whole new finance model or a whole new HR model. So those are all the things that the staff, and Jen can speak in a lot more detail, but those are the types of things that we're looking at on a go-forward basis.
Thanks, Juliana. And I think Councillor Fletcher was just hoping that somewhere along the line that OACH figured out with that too, but that may come later on, right? Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from board members? Thanks for that overview.
Juliana, it's just Paula one more time.
Debbie, I'll get you next.
Oh, sorry. Follow up. That Councillor Deputy Mayor Bailau has asked over again. She's not in our committee, but for the business model for the seniors unit, is that essentially what you'll be bringing forward? You've never seen.
So the financial review that we're doing through the due diligence is in essence the numbers we need for that business model. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Debbie, did you have a question?
It's more a question of clarification, and Julianne or Jen, you may have answered that from one of Paula's questions, but will you again go over how are you thinking of integrating OACH, or what will OACH's role be in this new seniors corporation?
So let me start, and Jen can augment. We're looking at, we are looking at what services TCHC currently has and which of those services could then enter into a service level agreement with the new corporation, and TCHC can provide that sort of service. That's one model. The other thing that I think you should all, or I've been at least considering, is council has also asked us to come back and establish a housing commissioner. And we're also looking at how the OACH might integrate or support or connect or align with a housing commissioner overall. So we have been asked to report back to council on the creation of a housing commissioner for the city that would ensure, look at our policies, look at our approaches when it comes to housing, and it's not just TCHC, it's more housing in general. When we develop affordable housing, our shelter system, our encampments, just to make sure that we're actually taking a human rights approach in that whole process. But I think, and what we're thinking about are how do we make sure that the OACH and the housing commissioner are also aligned so that there's not duplication or overlap and they can leverage each other? So we are looking at that.
I think where I'm getting confused is as seeing OACH as centered within TCHC. OACH is actually a standalone organization that pays attention to seniors seniors and other vulnerable populations in TCHC. So I would hope that if we are developing a new commissioner, we as the city, a new position of commissioner of housing, that somehow OACH will be integrated into that, or there is some close link between the two. It's basically about expanding OACH's mandate will be one approach.
Yeah, so so OACH right now is focused on supporting the tenants within TCHC. The housing commissioner is not it's going to be a lot broader. It's looking at how the city approaches affordable housing, how we house people, how we shelter people, how we deal with encampments, and making sure that throughout all of those processes and practices that the city has in place, that we are taking truly a human rights approach. So it is a bit broader, but we're actually considering how can OACH better align with that so we don't have two offices doing related work.
Yep, that's right.
So that's in the back of our mind, but I haven't reported out yet on the housing commissioner. So that's a report that has sort of been impacted by COVID as well, but we have started that work up again.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is to, I think it would be good if you would take a look at expanding the OACH's mandate as an approach to the housing commissioner's position.
We're looking at that.
Thanks, Debbie, and thanks, Juliana. Any other questions? Amanda?
For the priorities for the next quarter, I was just wondering what type of training will you guys be providing for the new staff that you will be hiring?
So we're going to be providing sort of a blend of training. One of the aspects of the training that so there are two new roles, for example, that will be part of the implementation of the ISM. One of the key roles is something called the Senior Services Coordinator, which is a role that's going to look at dealing with the vulnerabilities associated with the tenants and ultimately helping to connect them with the right level of supports and what they need and the partners. The training will be a combination of having an effective sort of opportunity to be successful in processes that are associated with doing that and TCHC activities and processes. And as well, we're going to be looking at a number of different aspects of training associated with working with seniors. So elder abuse, dealing with different types of mental health issues, falls prevention, different things that will be training that we're looking to put into place for not just the new staff, but broadly for all seniors housing staff as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may, I was just going to suggest also with your outreach for the Seniors Advisory Council that try to really reach out to some of the buildings where people might not speak English as a first language, and some of the groups that haven't been as represented as they have been on other councils. It would be great to see that diversity. It'd be great if we actually had more data about our tenants to be able to make sure that these councils actually reflect the diverse communities, but that would be really important to us as well.
So yes, and agreed, and that's one of the things we're working to try to ensure through that Senior Tenants Advisory Committee, for example, that we do have an appropriate representation on that committee, and we're working with the diversity office at the city as well on that.
Great. And last question is that Councillor Fletcher, or are you just cleaning your I couldn't tell what you're doing. Yeah, good. Councillor Fletcher?
No, I just wanted to comment on that now that we have a tenant engagement strategy and we will have tenant elections, and when we get to that, I'll be asking you some more questions about just actual accomplishing that in different buildings. I think it's really important that we recognize that in the new seniors unit, and that the folks that are applying, they are being selected by unclear who is selecting them. I actually am asking you who's selecting them and what that process is, compared to now we have people that are elected by tenants. So that's an interesting tension as to who speaks for who. And how are those folks selected from that, or is there, and what's your plan for once the tenants are elected to have their own tenant council of the seniors?
Thank you. So with regards to the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee that I was talking about, and my apologies, there's an alarm that's gone off in the building, so you're probably hearing some noise behind me.
Coming for your grant.
Yeah, at least it's you, not all of us. Yeah.
They may be on their way. So we're going to work through a process where we're going to assess all the applications from these different perspectives we've talked about. We're going to also engage. So it'll be Senior Housing Unit. And we're going to also engage our partners in senior services long-term care to support us in this process with the city. And we will work through a process to, first of all, to screen through the applicants, do some engagement to sort of understand fit with the role and make sure people understand what it's about. And then we will select the members for that. That's specific for the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee. That's not the broader tenant engagement system that is coming up a little later in the agenda.
Brent, what's the criteria then for the advisory committee? When you say then you would decide fit and those kinds of things, what's the criteria you're looking at in terms of makeup?
So we're working through terms of reference right now on what the Senior Tenants Advisory Committee will be specifically responsible for, and we're going to be looking to align the criteria to that terms of reference. So we've drafted that, and we're working on that right now. So it hasn't been finalized yet, and then we're going to look to align the applicants into that terms of reference and what we expect that committee to be doing. I mean, broadly, it will be giving us input on the different matters associated with the implementation of the ISM and those streams of activity that we kind of talked about earlier. But in terms of the specifics, it'll come out in alignment to the terms of reference that we're building right now. So it hasn't been finalized.
What kind of criteria are you looking for in terms of representation on the committee?
Sure. So just give me a sec. I'll just go through my notes. So we're looking for I've got it very specifically here. We're looking for representation of 12 to 15 people on the committee. We want to have it, ultimately we want it to be representative of our TCHC tenant data. And we're doing our best to have that match. If we can't get that, we're going to have it match as best we can with representation at a Toronto broad level. And that's been a recommendation from working with the Equity, Diversity, and Human Rights Office at the city as to how to approach that. In terms of, and also looking at sort of the geographic distribution of the representatives across the city. To give you an example, in the 29 applicants that we, and then also looking at things like age and gender and different things as well, LGBTQ plus and disability, accessibility, those lenses as well. So we've got a breakdown of the applicants from those perspectives because that's part of the process in which we collect the application, and we're looking to ensure that we have a representative view. And in the 29 that we got, we didn't find that we had enough diversity to get to that place.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back at me. Sorry.
Paula?
What's the exact role that this committee will be expected to fulfill, Grant?
So it'll be an advisory role. So they will not have decision-making authority, but we'll be working through processes as we move forward on the improvements, say, with policy and process with the ISM and new opportunities that we're going to bring forward. We're going to use this committee as a sort of a place to gather input in a consolidated way and in that representative way on behalf of the seniors. It won't be the only vehicle within which we engage tenants on the matters as we go along, but it will be a more focused, so the people that are joining us will have that responsibility to help us on that path. So we do want people that are committed to, you know, the sort of the importance of this role.
Great.
Will the board have the final approval over the membership here? You'll bring that to the board. Say, here's our recommended members of the here's what we've done. So there's a responsibility back publicly.
So we can certainly bring it forward if it's felt that that's a path that would be desirable. It wasn't our plan to bring it to the board, but it's something that we can consider. Yeah.
Yeah, just all around the governance, because there's many things changing, and we're going to have 2 streams for senior tenants. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.
Who's
You
the
better
public?
leave. Go ahead.
The public appointments process. There isn't one at TCHC, but there is one at the city itself. So have you consulted with that team?
Yes. So we actually are, the applications are going through the city's public appointment team.
Oh, you're going through public.
Yeah, they're going through what they said. Yeah. Yeah.
I get it. Thank you. I didn't hear that properly last time.
Yeah,
All right.
that's good.
Thank you.
Great. If there aren't any other questions, I'll let Grant mute and maybe leave the building, because I'm afraid that it's going to be.
I will go and maybe step away to see what's going on, because it's been very quiet in the hall. So I think others may have left. Yeah.
Yeah, you better. It would be terrible if we were actually holding him back and he should be leaving the building. So, if there aren't any other questions, I would suggest that this actually be a standing item. This is actually very important, and that we get updates regularly, if that's okay with the board members. I really appreciate all of the city members making yourself available and all the great work that's happening, and that this is transformational. It's a change in our organization. So let us know how it goes. Can I have an approval for information for this report?
Approved.
Paula and Debbie, all in favor? Great, I can see everybody. It's great. Thank you. Everybody's approved, and we'll move to the next item. And I know that if the city members want to stay, they're welcome to, but I also understand if you've got to take care of the rest of the city. Thank you for all your leadership in so many domains right now. I think we go back now, Dara, to the referral agreement policy, if I'm not incorrect.
No, we still have, we were going to deal, I think, with item 8E next, because we have applicants in relation to that item.
Thank you.
First of the, we've been unsuccessful in trying to join one of the deputants to the meeting. We got voicemail when we reached out to her. And so the first deputant that we have available for the committee, I believe, is Jenna McLeod.
Yes, here I am. Can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear. Thanks, welcome.
I'm not sure whether I should be on the phone or what I should be doing.
You know what, we can hear
yes,
you.
I'm here,
so if you want to start with your deputation right now, that would be great.
I will. Oh.
So if I can,
I'm just hearing my own feedback, and I'm not sure how to get out of it. All right. Well, I'm chair of the Greenwood Towers Tenants Association. It's a seniors building, and we collaborate with 2 other seniors building, 828 Kingston Road and 585 King East. You ask, why do our buildings even need a tenant rep or a committee? We're the ones who post the notices about COVID. We advocate for the tenants not coping. We introduce them to the 3rd building superintendent in as many months. So you'd say, well, there's not going to be any tenant table or council meetings for a while, so why are you fussing? Well, the reason is the tenants associations, while representing the leadership of our buildings, have no standings with TCHC to include our community service coordinators, both the one for engagement and the one for support, as well as our tenant services coordinator, and that's several people covering 3 buildings. They're not answering us. Our 3 associations came into existence because of the frustrations with the tenant rep system, but no one's listening to us. With the arrival of COVID-19, all the TERS progress ground to a halt. It just stalled. Our building chose the old tenant rep system with 2 nominees submitted. However, we can't elect them or have them as tenant reps because they haven't been approved by TCHC yet. No one's had any communication for 6 months regarding this, but we know neither one is in arrears. Kingston Road and King Street East chose the committee route and have affected their committees, but they've been equally unsuccessful engaging their CSCs to support the appointment of the tenant rep despite numerous phone calls. Now I'm getting so much feedback. I don't know if you can see me or what I should be doing. Can anyone
I
advise
think
me?
you have to turn off one device.
So we won't be able to, sorry, so if you can turn off your WebEx connection or the computer which you're monitoring the meeting. And
Okay, I've just turned off my computer,
Perfect.
not the feed.
Yeah, we can hear you. That's great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're doing great.
Okay. So the community rep does more than attend 9 tenant council meetings. We've been 4 years without an English-speaking tenant rep. And as usual, communication, as the Ombudsman noted in her report, is sadly lacking. I draw your attention to that colorful page, item 8E, tenant engagement refresh update attachment. Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. Somehow the information, we know we're included in there, but we don't know which phase we're even in. It seems that we don't care, but we actually do. To say that we can't have any election because of social distancing, well, we've already had one recently to choose between 2 options of floor tiles and paint trims. Ballots with photos showing the 2 choices were distributed to each unit, and tenants put their ballot in the mailbox by the super's office. This was the 3rd attempt at selecting tiles. The deadline was August 4th, and we still haven't even heard any results. We're also very concerned that frontline staff that we deal with don't get the board or committee decisions. For example, a year ago, when the board concluded that tenants associations should not indeed be part of the TERS options, our CSC and didn't even know about them. In other words, TCHC has been in full control of the TERS process. We're trying. It's taking years and much staff and time and money to choose a new system, whether it's a committee or keeping the previous system. TCHC conducted the election to choose which of the 2 pre-chosen systems we might prefer. Then the CSC ran the meeting for nominations. Then TCHC has to approve our nominees, or not. Why don't you just dispense with the illusion of democracy and choose someone you like? And this is exactly what's happening with the TCHC Seniors Advisory Committee, which began 2 years ago, and TCHC is mandated to include tenants. And I noticed that the gentleman who, I guess, had to leave in case there was a fire, was saying that they wanted to get things, he's had collaborations with such organizations as Lynn. But there is no Seniors Tenants Advisory Committee yet. It was going to be appointed by some group, and then now it's going to be TCHC appoints them. Well, now there's not enough diversity, so they have to reopen the nomination committee. But in the meantime, things are happening, and there isn't any official Seniors Advisory Committee from the tenants. I'd also like to add one more thing. There was a statement earlier that 87% of the tenants aren't making complaints. Perhaps not to the 981-5500 number, but they are to the tenants associations. Please note, we're seniors. Some people have no phone. Most of them don't have any internet access, let alone email. Some of them have other cognitive issues as well as linguistic issues. Some of them have emotional issues whereby if they're put on hold, they can't tolerate waiting, they get upset, and then they can't explain themselves. So there are plenty of complaints in our building, and I'm afraid I'm one of the small percentage that's making the complaints, but often on behalf of tenants who don't feel up to the task of doing it themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that thorough deputation. And I will open it up now to see if there's any comments, clarifications around that, but otherwise actually moving to, should we stick, I guess we should stick with this item then Dara?
Yes, I would expect we would stick with this item. We have, once the committee is established that they don't have any questions of this deputant, we have a second deputant who wanted to speak to this matter as well.
Okay, so why don't we go to the second deputant?
The second deputant is Susan Gapka. Is Ms. Gapka on the line?
Susan, are you on the line? Susan, wondering if you're on the line or if you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Welcome.
Excellent. Oh, good grief. It's hard. I got a timer here. Hi, I'm Susan Gapka. I want to begin with how grateful I've felt the last 6 months of this pandemic. And of course, the last number of years that I've had stable housing. Thank you for providing those services. You know, it's been a really tough time, and it wouldn't be a good time to be on the streets trying to figure out things. So just wanted to start with that. I also want to check in on how difficult this deputation process is, but give strong thanks to the committee and to staff for, I get like an email follow-up and I get a telephone call, and for doing what you can to make this system work. But it's really frustrating because sometimes it's conversational on the YouTube channel or at your meeting, but the deputation process gives me like 3 to 5 minutes, which I have timing on one device using my mobile so you can hear me, and using a desktop to follow with a bunch of windows open. So it'll be great when we get through this and have a tenant engagement process in place. You talked a lot about the complaints process and really, and about how the data is collected. And I wanted to I'm grateful that we're moving forward, but I think the engagement must rely, and here's where I have multiple screens going on. The multi-phase approach to tenant elections. I don't know how these criteria were selected. 53 communities in the first phase and 172 in phase 2. So that engagement can be occurring as we roll this implementation out, because that was always the goal. It's just really specific now and broken down due to the board's request. I'm looking at my timer. I got 2 minutes, so that's good. And so the idea, and I think this is exactly what tenants need at this time. We've all been through a tough time. We can't use our our tenant rooms, only recently our backyards, practically living on our balconies during the summer. I'm grateful to have that. But this is so the engagement can't start soon enough for someone like me. And I just wanted to remind you that I'm watching. But the other thing is around how data is collected both on the complaints and reminding you that we really require a fulsome anti-oppression, anti-racism framework going into this. I can share with you, as the 10 years we've been trying to get this activated and do consultations, white Caucasian managers and board members were treated differently than racialized people and women. I just want to say that was a real learning experience for me. So I hope that when we do get representatives selected, there is a sound process around what are human rights. Human rights do not support the advantaged group, but their human rights framework is for supporting the disadvantaged group. And the categories, I'm checking my time, Madam Chair, and I use Madam and remembering we're moving past that. I just got a complaint last week, or advice. The annual review form has male and female as categories. And really, I hope we're moving to men, women, and non-binary. but we should be trying to collect data on who our tenants are around race, around sexuality, around gender identity, around sex as men and women, just so that we can get a better idea of who our tenants are and how we can introduce them or have more people introduced into the tenant engagement. I'm looking at about my last 10 to 15 seconds. So just to comment on, it's not the tenant experience, as a committee member asked, or it's the tenant experience, not a satisfaction survey, and that's where that data can be collected. We measure experience of the tenants. It's a bias to measure success, and you find that success is usually full of complaints. But anyways, on that time, I want to thank the committee. I'm following this process, and I'm just looking for ways to serve my my community, TCHC, and the city as a whole. So thank you for offering this opportunity to continue to give advice and thoughts.
Thank you, Susan. A rich deputation as usual, and it's nice to hear your voice. Any clarification from anybody before we move to the actual? So I think then we're going to actually take this item, the tenant engagement refresh update, and focus on that as a continuance. I don't think there's another deputation, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Sheila, maybe over to you. This is part of the Chief Operating Officer's reports, but we decided to pull this one out in particular. Do you want to make any comments, and then we can open it up to the board? Oh, we can't hear you.
Got it unmuted.
Okay, now we can. Yeah.
I can present the report if that's the will of the committee. We can get the slide deck up.
And I know that we did actually receive this, but I think this now that with the deputations in our mind, and this actually links to some of the other items that we had even with the seniors.
Right. I'm just Dara, if we can get the slide deck up.
Yeah, I've asked Sonia if she can pull it up.
Okay. So I'll just start while we're waiting for that to come up. As you will remember, at the governance committee, we did some really heavy lifting on looking through what was proposed through the tenant engagement refresh at the board meeting last July. We confirmed that the Tenants First team and the city manager's office that the tenant engagement refresh system as presented and approved by the board met the requirements of the current shareholder direction, and they endorsed our implementation plan. The board received, if I could have the first slide, please.
Getting there.
It's up there now.
Okay. The board also received information on July 31st around how we were moving forward with that multi-phased approach, and we were directed by the board to come before the Tenant Service Committee every meeting and provide an update on where we're at with implementing the tenant engagement refresh, and that is what I'm setting out to do today. If I could have the next slide. So as the board saw in July, the multi-phase approach, we did a deep dive into the status of every community in our portfolio. We identified 53 communities that had selected the model from one of the 4 auctions, that had enough nominations to go forward with the community rep model or enough members to form committees, and communities that had had a high to moderate tenant participation throughout the process. So we are moving ahead now with the first phase of those 53 communities while we ready the 172 communities in phase 2 and the 111 communities in phase 3 to move through the process. If I could have the next slide. So the phase 1, the 53 communities, the breakdown is in front of you. The community representative model, a total of 19 communities. The building committee model, a total of 33. Councillor Fletcher, you asked how many seniors buildings are embedded in those numbers. There are 8 seniors buildings that are in the first phase in Central, 4 in the West, and 3 in the East. If I could have the next slide. So there are 5 stages in the implementation of establishing tenant leadership, representation in our communities. It starts with a communication and outreach campaign where we re-engage tenants, implement the communication campaign. We use multiple channels for that, confirm all nominations and tenant interest. There are then a series of tenants meetings that are actually starting to occur this month, info sessions, open call meetings, meet and greet, in-person meetings with COVID restrictions taken into account. We then confirm nominations, relaunch the nomination process as needed, disseminate the nomination forms, receive, assess the candidacy, confirm good standing, confirm that candidacy with tenants. Then there are a series of candidate meetings, in-person meetings to share platform, again with COVID restrictions. And then we move to the election day where tenant reps will be elected and tenant committee members representation will be confirmed. So that 5-step process for phase 1 is occurring starting now in September. We're getting moving on those communities, and we hope to have tenant representation and leadership in those 53 communities established late in November. The next slide, and we'll make these slides available on our public website because it does provide more detail in terms of the milestones and the steps that we're going through. We've been working since the writing of the report and firmed up some of these dates. We'll make sure this is available on the website. The next slide. So by November, complete phase 1 implementation. As we're moving through phase 1, we want to learn from the process as we go so that we can improve it and apply lessons learned to phases 2 and phases 3. And as I've done today, we will come back to every tenant services committee meeting and provide an update as to where we're at in each phase. So we're launching phase 1 now, and we're readying ourselves to learn from phase 1 and to initiate outreach on phases 2 and 3. And as I learned from the deputation earlier by Ms. McLeod, it's clear that we need to get out immediately to communities and confirm for them which phase they're in and who their engagement CSC is that will be working with them to move them through this process.
Thanks, Sheila. That was my takeaway as well from that deputant. I'll open it up. Thank you for the report, and I will open it up to members if there are questions or comments. Amanda first.
Hi, Sheila. Thank you for that very detailed slide. I was just wondering, in regards to those 53 communities who have selected the community representative model, um, are they going to go through that first implementation stage in November, or can they start doing things in October once you guys start to get a view of how things are going in regards to the kids or children going back to school?
So it is a phased approach, and what we're trying to do is be responsive to where communities are at. We have communities that have adopted the building committee model, that have selected through that process their representatives and are meeting today. So we will continue to support that, but those communities that haven't moved that far through the building committee process will bring them along. So we're trying to be responsive and agile as we look at the needs of every community on the ground through the CSCs for engagement.
And so how are they meeting? Are they meeting like via Zoom or in person?
So we're trying to do in-person meetings. We found that the technology, the disparity in access to technology was fairly broad. So we are trying to socially distance, using PPE and provide in-person connections as far as we can.
And also, I know that the recreational spaces are closed, but for instance, like my building where they've selected a representative, would it be okay if they did meet outside? Are we still able to provide them with like the chairs and tables that are located downstairs in the recreational room?
I know that our health and safety coordinator would say any meeting outside is preferred to a meeting inside. So we'll work with frontline staff to make that facility available if it isn't already.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Amanda. I think Councillor Fletcher was next.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you so much, Sheila, for bringing this great report. I love that graph. I'm just going to ask if you could just also, Sonia could send the deck out the way she sends everything out. So we just have this.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that I guess yesterday or the day before, the mayor and the medical officer of health said there will be a second wave of COVID. So taking that into account, and I think Amanda's mentioned a few times about what happens when people go back to school. We don't know what that's going to look like either.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great frame. But we may find that it's not going to be as smooth as we think, partly because of COVID and what's happening and people's attention, quite frankly. I think if I was a mom with wondering about my kids going to school, I'd be thinking about that first, not necessarily the tenant election. So I want to make sure that we, in this pandemic, leave the door open for those great tenants that have many other things going on right at the moment, whether for those buildings where we're going to proceed. So that's the first thing. I gather, Sheila, from you that who will do the work, it'll be part of the work of the new hub. Is that right? Do I have that kind of
That's correct.
thinking right? So that will actually be great. I think you agree because it's very concrete work that the community services person will be doing out of the hub.
Correct.
So, and I think that tenants, about these hubs, do you get that impression? I do.
I do. No one anticipated COVID, and it would have been fabulous if we didn't have COVID, but we have tried to pivot and keep our community safe and keep as many initiatives going forward as possible.
Agreed.
But it did slow us down.
Totally 100%. And while we're on that, I just think that TCHC has done remarkable work in the cleaning and really thoughtfully handled COVID. we'll see what happens with school. I think that's on everybody's minds, but kudos to you and your team for that. And it's just interesting that the hub will be in place, this will be in place, and they'll be going together. And I'm wondering, I like the fact that you're going to evaluate the first 53, and we'll see if all 53 come in by November, or it's a bit more staggered, but I think getting the rhythm going is important. And I would like to actually be tracking, we just had lists before. Did we have, sorry, I don't have everything in front of me, but when we dealt with this at the board, Sheila, I think you'd provided us with a list of all of the buildings or addresses and how many people came to a meeting, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Is that what we had previously? Do you think we could get that, because it's all in one place, but divided, here's the 53, here's the 111, here's the, what's the other number, 130, I wrote it down somewhere, which leads us, here's the 53, 172, 111, and I think that will be helpful to track. I know I'm going to ask for my own ward, and I think other councillors will want to know just what's going on. And are there only 336 communities that will be part of this?
That's correct. That's the full portfolio.
Yes. And can you tell me if Greenwood Towers is on the first 53? Or
I can't.
You can't.
I
so,
can.
But if we have that list, we're going to know who's where, and everybody's going to know where they are.
And I know that Julio Gregoris, who's on the line now, and his team have that. They have shared it with me. I've seen it.
Okay, well, maybe that can be shared with the board, and that can just be regular. So this is just part of our tracking and evaluation of this extremely important thing. And what does good standing mean? I know Janet represented that. Is it just if you're in arrears, or is it if you've had a bunch of N5s, N4s, and whatever's, any violence, etc., any of your tenant, your property management saying, oh, that's interesting, that's been a difficult tenancy.
Yeah.
Is that part of that evaluation or not?
Yes, it is. And we shared the criteria in the last update that we provided. They're pretty clear. I don't have them memorized, but they touch on the topics that you've raised: arrears, criminal behavior. There are 4 or 5 criteria that will be communicated to tenants.
Yes, and thank you. That's good. And so if we get that list, I think that'll narrow things down. We'll understand the progress. And I do note, yes, that the city said it meets the engagement, but the city also said don't do it online. Not everybody has those materials. So that was an important contribution back from the tenants first group, which they sent in the letter that we have. So thank you very much for taking the time to really drill down here. And I feel like it's coinciding now with model.
Good.
I wanted to have, which is a rigorous property management model and a strong, healthy tenant on the ground model. And I think we're moving absolutely in the right direction. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Paula, for fleshing out, some of those more intricate points. I'm really glad to hear, Sheila, that you were recognizing that there's some people that are not going to be reached if we just actually focused on technology. So thank you for going the extra mile. That's a group that we don't want to miss during this time, and catching them for this can be also a support during the COVID time. I'm going to ask. We lost John because he has another commitment, and I know we might start losing people at 11:30. So I'm going to ask if Kevin. You want to comment?
I just wanted to comment because Councillor Fletcher raised the point of COVID, and I'm not sure that we've necessarily communicated this to the board yet. But originally, as you know, we've put in a high level of cleaning protocols, very early on in the COVID exercise. And our plans when we were coming into August, we were thinking after the Labor Day weekend, we would start to relax those. And with the provincial decision to move back to in-class participation in the schools, we've decided to keep those, high level of protocols in place until around Thanksgiving, and we're going to assess what is happening, in our buildings. We've been pretty successful at mitigating any chances of outbreaks or serious outbreaks in our building, and so we thought it just prudent to do that. And in conjunction with that, we're also working closely with Toronto Public Health to give us early warning if there are any cases that are popping up throughout the portfolio, not just in a select number of buildings, but now throughout the portfolio. So that's part of the protocol, and I hope, Councillor Fletcher, that will allow us, as we start to see things merge, how we might be able to change or adapt the tenant election process to be able to continue through if there, if phase 2 starts to really materialize. Can't guarantee it, but that's our intent anyways.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to ask if we could get an approval of the tenant engagement refresh update. Thanks, Debbie. Seconded by Amanda, and all in favor. John won't be but we've got quorum still. I think what we'll do is go back up to, do you want to go up to the referral agreement and get that one done, Dara?
Yeah, I think that was the next item on the agenda would be item number 6.
Great. So we're going to go back to number 6, which is the referral agreement policy. I don't believe there's any deputations that are remaining for this meeting, and over to Kevin. Do you want to? Are you speaking to this one, or is there anything we have? We did get a report on this. This is the agencies that refer to that have access to some of our units, and this has been a question that's come up by deputants and by committee members.
Yeah, so Lindsay wrote the report, and I think Lindsay is on vacation, if I recall correctly. So Scott Kirkman is here to speak to the report. I'm going to take it as read, and probably move to questions on this, unless there is.
That's what I would suggest, is that this was a thorough. Actually, I just want to say that all of the reports were very thorough, and I really appreciate all the work that goes into this. Do people have questions about the referral agreement? We have Scott on the line, and I see Richard and Kevin.
This isn't the use of space, is it?
No.
Okay.
We're getting to that. Oh no, we did the use the use of space. We actually was in the consent agenda, I believe.
We had deputation on. Okay, all right. Sorry. I'm fine with this. That's good.
Yeah. So I see no questions. Is there anything that you want us to keep an eye on though with this? Because actually, this does come up periodically, Kevin.
I think, this is, establishing a policy, that we have in place. We've reviewed it at ELT. We're looking for the committee endorsement of the policy, and certainly I think it is one of the things that.
So I think we have approval. Okay. Can I have an accepting the report and the policy? I think Councillor Fletcher was moving it as seconder.
Yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I think what we need is actually a motion that.
That's what I thought. The policy, right? So this one we're actually, sorry, I was behind in my notes here. So this one actually is an approval of the policy. So would you be okay to amend that, Councillor Fletcher, to approve the policy?
Yes, absolutely, yeah, fine.
And I think I had a seconder on this to approve the policy. Debbie. Yeah. All in favor? Great, we've got everybody's approval there, Dara. Thank you. And thank you for the work. Policy approved.
All right. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, that's great. That's actually, even though it doesn't seem like a significant one, it is actually, in terms of the discussion. The Chief Operating Officer's report, we've been touching on a number of different items. What's remaining is the performance measures, the COVID response, and this has been peppered throughout our conversation, the Airbnb units, pest control, and we've already gone through the tenant engagement refresh. Is there any... I'm assuming that people have read the reports and that may want to pinpoint into any of the discussion that on those areas. Is there anything you wanted to just actually point out? I know you have a whole report, Sheila, but I'm wondering if it was possible to go to the discussion, or how would you like to handle it? I know you've got a whole PowerPoint.
I'm fine to go to discussion if that's the will of the committee. Answer any questions that you have.
maybe I'll just poll you. Sheila does have a more detailed PowerPoint slide that we could put up, or we can go item by item. Maybe
Why don't you go item by item and then
perfect.
see if there's
Then we'll go for there. Okay, great. Thanks, Paula. I appreciate everybody's help. It's a team sport. Performance measures. Any questions, comments on the performance measures? And I think what we were going to do we have to actually get an approval on each of these items, right, Dara?
So we can approach.
I think we could. I was going to just say, I think we can approve. I mean, once we've gone through them, since they're for information, I think we could just have one motion just for efficiency on all of them.
Perfect. Perfect. Let's then, so I don't hear anything for A. But on the COVID, is there anything else that you want us to know? I think what we're hearing is that TCHC is bracing for the next wave, following the city's guidelines. Making sure that we're not actually reopening things too quickly, so that we're prepared. Recognizing that many of our buildings actually have parents and school-age children, and that they're going to need that attention, and that we want to maintain the level of cleanliness that we've and responsiveness that we've seen previously. Is there anything, Sheila, that you think that we should be aware of?
So just one point, as we move into recovery, we know that it is critically important for tenants to have their community spaces reopened, to have their gyms reopened, and I just want to say that we're monitoring that very carefully, and as soon as we can, we will reopen those spaces for program. As Kevin alluded to, we really want to see the impact of school opening. We're going to take a very measured approach, and but we do understand that activating those spaces again with program, with function is important for our tenants.
Great. Anything in particular from anyone on the COVID response?
Nope.
One of the things I would just say is maybe TCHC being proactive on any community testing or community outreach that you would be desiring from the healthcare care sector. We've seen some really interesting outreach to places like Thorncliffe Park, and there's some work happening in St. Jamestown and others that we should probably recognize that the neighborhoods that are most hit in Toronto correlate with the number of TCHC buildings. So maybe being proactive in terms of what we need to be doing from a community front was one comment that I had.
And yeah, just in that regard, we work fairly closely with Toronto Public Health. In fact, have weekly calls with Toronto Public Health, in that regard, and understand what additional programs we can do in that regard. We've done some. We've focused a lot of it on the seniors portfolio initially, and I think as we move through the fall and again the return to school, that it will become even more prevalent in the family portfolio.
Great, sounds good. On the next item is the Airbnb, and I appreciate that you brought this back. This was important. Any comments in terms of the actions that are now underway to greatly curtail this?
So we do recognize that the subletting of RGI units is not acceptable in the housing that we provide. We are working, I just wanted to point out that the City of Toronto has formed a panel that we are an active participant in. There is new regulations coming in that will require anyone who wants to put an Airbnb up to register with the city, and we're working with MLS to have our buildings excluded from that licensing. So we're active with the city trying to get this in hand. We have 5 ongoing cases that when the Landlord and Tenant Board opens up, we will be pursuing through that vehicle. And I just want to point out what we learned through this whole process. If you pick a TCHC building and you Google it for Airbnb, that it will give you not only that building, but units in a certain geographic distance.
Wow.
So sometimes while it looks like there are a huge number of Airbnb opportunities in our buildings, we have found that it's actually not the case. Just information for the committee.
Great, thank you. Any questions in particular on this item?
Yeah, it shows there's not huge numbers, but there have been Airbnb in TCHC buildings.
Yes, we recognize that.
Might not be the whole building, but I guess that's really the conversation is, and when you say that our buildings will be excluded, means that tenants won't be allowed to post that and
that's correct.
Put their unit on as an Airbnb unit.
Correct.
And that goes for market units as well, because they are significantly below market, many of them.
We're working on that.
The intent, Councillor Fletcher, you know, for us to get agreement with the city is that we would exclude the entire building, whether they're market units or whether they are RGI units.
And somebody who is in a market unit, I think the Airbnb rules are if you can have, anyway, a certain number of days. I just guess these are all housing, social housing, publicly, and there's no tolerance whatsoever for Airbnb-ing them. Period.
So, yeah, so continue to let us know how it goes. I'm glad to hear that you're actually pursuing some of these individuals that have been breaking the rules. Any other items, any other comments around that item?
No, thank you.
Hearing none, I will go to the last item, D, which is the pest control program, where we see that we were curtailed a bit during COVID around this, and I worry about the fall if we continue to do that.
So we do have, as you know, a very active pest management program. Richard Groach is our leader in this area, and Richard, I know, is on the line, and I would ask him to respond to that question.
Yeah, just about the fall, are we going to still be holding off? And, you know, is there ways that we can safely go into buildings?
Yeah, I'd like, Richard has a strategy. I'd like him to.
Thanks, Richard.
Good morning, everybody. So throughout the COVID emergency, we've maintained our service levels as it relates to the common spaces of our buildings. So all our common areas, including shoot rooms, recreation rooms, laundry rooms, etc. We've maintained the service levels to be compliant with the rent safe bylaw. With regards to in-suite services, we've maintained service levels with treatments that did not require the tenancy to vacate the unit for a period of time. The goal was to, wherever possible, keep the tenant in place and safe within their home. We did complete treatments where we could safely relocate the individual to a place where they can maintain social distancing. And in many of those cases, those treatments were effectively delivered. We are starting to ramp up and move forward with some of the in-suite treatments that require the tenant to vacate. That will be a slow process, and it still requires staff to work with the individual to obtain a solution that has a place for them to stay safely while that takes place. In the meantime, we are working with our vendors to provide interim solutions that may not require the individual to vacate.
Thank you, Richard. Any other questions? So it sounds like we're working on that.
Yeah.
All right, hearing none, I'm going to ask if we could get an approval for all of 8, A, B, C, D. I think we already got the E. Sorry, Amanda, are you approving that? Or asking a question? Oh, I think we lost, Amanda froze just as she put her hand up. Sorry, Amanda, did you have a question or did you just put your hand up?
You're muted, Amanda.
You're muted, Amanda. It happens to all of us.
I just want to go back to 8A attachment 1.
Yep.
I stepped away from the computer. In regards to the crime rates that have gone up, there were 2 incidents in my building where somebody had their window broken, and then another incident where somebody was visited by their ex-boyfriend who was like kicking in their front door, and they had called the number to have one of the special constables come out, and they were told to call the police that there wasn't enough constables. And they had asked me how many constables are assigned to each building, but I wasn't able to answer that question. So I was just wondering, do we have a specific amount of constables that are assigned to each building, or is it just for like the unit in general?
I remember this question coming up. Sheila, can you answer that?
Yeah, so the constables are allocated geographically, but they also will flip and backfill for each other if there are fewer cases or fewer calls in one area and more calls in another area. But we can provide that geographic breakdown for the committee. And we have also aligned the special constables with the new hub model. And it's our intention to have the special constables that are aligned with the hub, with the region and integrated team meetings, so we can get better coordination of service for tenants on the ground. Okay. And if there are if there's a particular incident that you want us to follow up on, Director, if you send me that information, I'll make sure it gets followed up on.
Okay, thank you. Because they were told to call the police, but they didn't want any police interaction, so there wasn't enough constables available to come to the building. Yeah.
So if you send me that, we'll learn from that. Yeah. And that doesn't sound like good service to me.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing like a major drop in availability of constables or anything, are we, Sheila?
No, we're not. So I do want to look into that situation.
Okay. So follow up offline, Amanda, with Sheila. I think that would be great. Any other questions on any of the items in section 8? Then I'm going to ask for an approval of all of those items that we haven't already gotten approval on. So A to D. And these are for information. Don't all jump at once.
Go ahead. All good.
Thank you, Paula. Can I have a seconder? I know it's a long meeting. I think it's harder online, isn't it? Amanda seconded. Thank you.
Linda.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have an approval on that, and with that, if there aren't any,
Linda.
Yes.
Linda, maybe I must have been sleeping through that, because we approved the public agenda 2A. We had the public minutes. We had 2D and 2E, which did we approve that under consent? Because it shows that it's an actual report to the committee.
Dara, do you want to answer for me, because I can't keep track.
Yeah, yes, I mean,
I'm being honest. I'm being honest. Yeah, let's make sure that we got everything. Thanks, Paula.
We did approve it in consent.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, in which case I actually did have 2 things about that. Yeah. So
on which one,
I didn't realize. I thought they yeah. I just on that.
I'm sorry,
we
Paula,
had a deputation on. Pardon?
Paula, before you speak, Linda, I have an 11:30 hard stop. So if
okay,
11:30, I'll just remove myself. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Debbie, and we'll try to wrap up by 11:30. Go ahead, Councillor.
It's just 2 things, and maybe they're just comments, but I did send something into you, Dara, for the use of space, because one of the deputations that was from Ms. Dugan had some fantastic suggestions in there about contractors. So
yeah,
Dara, did you get that? Because I wanted to actually move that. That's something that we should do. There should be a checklist. When some contractors coming into your unit, often they don't treat tenants very well. That tenants understand what is being expected, and the contractors do too. So I thought that was very helpful, and I copied it.
It's a nice idea. Yeah.
And I don't know how you'd like to deal with that. It was under public space. It wasn't exactly related to public space. Or if you just like, I'll table that today, and maybe we can ask for a report from Sheila on how that might happen for contractors.
Sure.
Why don't we take that away, Councillor Fletcher, and we will bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Then that would be helpful because I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I actually noticed that too. Yep.
And that would be also a great thing for a tenant advisory committee to review periodically, the contractors going into units and how we're determining if they're doing a good job or not. And the other was just on the tenants first. There was something about how it's being slowed down because of the number of committee of adjustment applications that are difficult for severance. I would like to know how many of those single family homes and agency homes are under a C of A. That would be helpful. And that might be holding it up. And then as well, I just have to be, it's great to get that tenant's first report and that we're finally moving on the single families and agency homes. But I do want to just tell the board of my continuing concern and it will probably come up at the board meeting with that, as to how we're basically saying, well, we're losing all this money and assets, we're losing all of this, we're losing our ability to borrow, rather than we're keeping all of these units as social house agencies. And it happens every time. Every single report has the same thing. It's, we're doing this, but you know what? We're losing $380 million in assets. Well, the social housing is not losing $380 million in assets. It was this corporation that said sell every single one of them. If that was in order to get the money to repair, we're saving money on repairs. We are keeping units that we don't have a great ability to tend ourselves. It's a great outcome. We should be happy and proud rather than every report being so negative, and I'm flagging that for you, Madam Chair. And I'll flag it at the board, and I think probably Councillor Deputy Mayor will also flag that at the board and get it very tight. That ship sailed a long time ago.
Thanks, Paula. I agree. I've actually personally heard some incredible stories about the impact of those scattered housing going to organizations that are doing tremendous work, and it might be worthwhile for us to actually hear from Dixon Hall at some point about what has been transpiring, and it actually is it's totally inspiring, and I feel like it was actually I'm with you totally. So let's think about how we can actually look at the focus. Yeah. No, that's great. Thanks, Paula. Any other last items? Okay, we are going to get in here 4 minutes early. Can I have an approval for for all of? I think we got the approval for the items. We've just actually need approval to adjourn. Can I have an approval? Thank you. All in favor? And I just want to thank everyone for being patient with me and enjoy the last days of summer. And we got lots of work to do in the fall, and let's keep on track. So thank you, everyone.
Can I just thank you for a very well-run meeting, Linda Jackson.
Absolutely, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you. I now need a drink. No, thank you. A drink of coffee. Thank you.